Hi friends, so today we are going to talk about PER, which is the practical experience requirement required to be an ACCA member. Now, as you all know, there are 3 steps to being an ACCA member. Number 1, completing your 13 papers. Number 2, finishing your online ethics and professional skills module, EPSM. And usually it's recommended that this module is done before you start the professional level. Okay. And number 3 is completing your 36 months of PER, practical experience requirements. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you step by step everything that you need to know about PER. And I think by the end of the video, I'm hopeful that you would have a very clear perspective of how you need to approach this part of your journey. Now, when you talk about PER, which is 36 months of relevant work experience, the ACCA is very flexible in telling students that you can pursue this experience can be before you have done the course, while you're doing the ACCA course, or after you finish the course, but obviously it needs to be relevant work experience. Now, a lot of students have this doubt and confusion that is it similar to articleship when you're doing, let's say, a course like Indian CA? The answer is no. The articleship requirement of CA is a lot different. It's firstly embedded as a part of the curriculum. You have to pursue it while you're doing your CA. In fact, you have to finish it in most cases before you finish your final CA exam, and you work as an intern or an article on a stipend. Okay. Whereas when you talk about the practical experience requirements of the ACCA, you're not necessarily working while you're doing the course. It's very flexible. You could have had an accounting and finance experience before having started the course. You could have some experience while you do the course. And obviously after you finish you've become an ACCA affiliate and finish your 13 papers, naturally when on your job, that experience is counted. Okay. So that way it's different from CA Articleship. Now the next big question is 36 months of relevant work experience. What is relevant work? Now relevant work is anything in the field of accounting, auditing, advisory, or finance in general. Okay. Now you could either work in consulting, so you could work in a small CA firm, you could work in a mid-sized CA firm, you could work in the big 4. So that's and of course in these organizations you are taking up something in advisory, accounting, auditing, taxation, consulting, investment banking. So anything in the domain of accounting and finances, typically considered to be relevant. You could also be working in the industry, like you could be working in FMCG, you could be working in an IT company, you could be working in an auto company, but obviously in the F&A, finance and accounting departments of those companies as well. So any job which is around finance, accounting, advisory, auditing, taxes, investment banking, the larger word to put it is finance and accounting, is considered as relevant. Whether or not the organization is small, mid-sized or big, it doesn't matter. Now you need to regularly record your 36 months of work experience or your PER in your My Experience records, which can be accessed via your My ACCA account. Okay. Now a question often students have is that 36 months of work experience that the ACCA talks about, which can be done before, while you study, after you study, practically kaise possible hota hai? And I'll explain it to you. Before you start your ACCA, if ACCA is your first qualification, then generally you don't have experience because you're a student, you're just studying, okay? But however, having said that, if you are a CA student pursuing ACCA, like you finished your CA intern, then you're doing ACCA, or you finished your CA final and you're doing ACCA, then you've done your articleship, which can be counted as relevant work experience, okay? Now, obviously, there are regulations to it that you have to document it, you have to have a supervisor that signed it off, but that work that you've done as in your articleship can be counted as relevant work experience, which can be added in your 36 months. Second आ जाता है while you do your ACCA. Okay, now while you do your ACCA में ऐसा है कि if you're an undergraduate student, जैसे आपने grade 12 या first year के बाद ACCA शुरू किया है, then generally our recommendation to students is that don't work till you've at least finished 8 or 9 papers as a bare minimum, okay? Because at least that much of skill and focus you need to finish ACCA. So कम से कम 9 papers तक तो आपको काम नहीं करना चाहिए. And only if you're comfortable, you start working alongside your professional level, 10th paper onwards. Again, that's not a compulsion. There are a lot of students I know who want to finish their 13 papers with focus and only then start work, and that's also absolutely okay. But again, I know a lot of students who are comfortable working after they've finished 9 papers. But I typically recommend that after 8-9 papers, you may start to work into the professional level together. So that is when while you're studying ACCA. And obviously, if you finished your ACCA, naturally you're going to get onto a job. So after you've done ACCA, anyways, you're doing a job, which is a part of the 36 months of work experience. Okay. Another very important thing you need to know is that these 36 months don't have to be continuous. They can be in parts, and they don't have to be with one organization. So you may be a part of multiple organizations, you may be in multiple roles, you may be in multiple divisions, you may have multiple bosses. It could have been a broken journey, doesn't matter. All of this will add up to your 36 months of relevant work ex if your working is relevant and it's obviously approved or signed off by a supervisor, which I'm going to talk about. Okay, now so this is with respect to how the 36 months flow. One more question which a lot of students have is that if you want to work alongside doing ACCA, like after your 9 papers or maybe after your 13 papers and you're starting off, what kind of organizations and what kind of job profiles should you look at? Now, generally, there is no right or wrong. You can go to a small organization, you could go to a mid-sized organization, you could go to a big 4. So it's really about your journey. But I have generally seen that students that start off with mid-sized CA firms or small to mid-sized CA firms often get wonderful experience with diverse roles, right? Like sometimes you're doing some audit assignments, you could be doing certain tax assignments, sometimes you may be put in certain advisory roles. So when you're in a mid-size, sort of a small to mid-size organization, you can get exposure in various roles and you'll get an overall perspective of how consulting works, and then you can probably take a deep dive in a big 4 with one department or one function that you really love the most. Okay, so I generally recommend students that, if you're doing some work alongside ACCA, so you're very young, stakes are low, salaries really don't matter at this age. What is important is your experience. So then it's best to start out with working in some mid-sized CA firms, get exposure to for a couple of years, and then deep dive and commit to certain large organizations. Having said that, I also know students who directly start with Big 4, and there is, like I said, nothing right or wrong. Okay, so this is generally my recommendation to students. Now we'll move to the next point, which is how to document your 36 months of experience. How do you document your PR? So let's talk about that. How do you document your performance objectives? So number 1, you are supposed to achieve 9 objectives, and as you can see on your screens, these 9 objectives are 5 essential objectives and 4 technical objectives. Okay, तो आपको ये 9 objectives दिखाना है कि आपने किस तरह से इनको satisfy किया या किस तरह से इनको achieve किया है within your 36 months of work journey. Okay, number 1. Now, each of these objectives that you have been able to demonstrate at your work, you need to describe it to the ACCA in about 200 to 400 or 500 words. So you need to write, instances, concise explanations of how you've demonstrated these objectives. Okay. And very importantly, each of them have to be approved or signed off by a practical experience supervisor. Okay, now who appoints this practical experience supervisor? You need to appoint this practical experience supervisor, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how do you sort of get to this. Now, your practical experience supervisor typically could be your boss, your manager, your line manager, somebody whom you report to in the organization, who can sign off and say that yes, you have demonstrated these objectives, right? So somebody who has seen your work, basically, right? Now, second, very importantly, your practical experience supervisor necessarily needs to be a qualified accountant. So he could be a chartered accountant, he could be an ACCA, he could be a CPA, but he has to be a qualified accountant. And the way you need to approach this is, as you start filling the details, on your journey, you will understand that you need to enter the records of your supervisor, basically in your My Experience records, and there'll be an invitation which will be sent to your supervisor. The supervisor will have to create an account, and only then he or she will be able to sign off your objectives, right? So when you're writing your objectives, the sign off can only happen by the supervisor once the supervisor has made an account. One last point, if you're working with an ACCA approved employer, your journey can be there can be a bit simpler route to this. Now, ACCA approved employer क्या होता है? Before I explain, जैसे ACCA has got a concept of an approved learning partner, ALP. When you're learning, you study with an ALP, like synthesis learning is an ALP. वैसे ही ACCA has the concept of an approved employer. Okay, so it's approved certain employers, and for example, your big 4, your big 6, yeah, EY, PwC, KPMG, Deloitte, BDO, ग्रैंड थॉर्टन, क्रेडिट सुइस, इस तरह के काफ़ी सारे लार्ज ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं विच आर कॉल्ड अप्रूव्ड एम्प्लॉयर्स, एंड फॉर योर रेडी रेफरेंस आई एम पुटिंग द लिंक बिलो. ओके, नाउ इफ यू आर वर्किंग with an approved employer, ACCA is confident of the standards, ACCA is confident of the practices in these approved employers. That's why they've approved them, isn't it? So they want to make your journey a bit simpler. So what the ACCA says is, अगर आप एक approved employer के साथ काम कर रहे हैं, then of course you need to satisfy the 36 months of work experience. You have to make a record of it in your my experience records. But what you can skip is documenting those objectives, right? Those 9 objectives. You don't need to now write explanations. In fact, you have a simpler journey. What you need to do is you need to download a form which is called as the approved employer PER confirmation form. तो ये आपके my experience में आपको form मिल जाएगा. And I repeat, it's called the approved employer PER confirmation form. So when you download it from your my experience in your my ACCA, you fill up that form. You take sign-offs, you send it to the ACCA, and ACCA will automatically update the records. Okay, so 36 months of work ex तो करना ही है, उसका आपको information भी my experience पे update करना है, पर आपको हर objective explain करने की ज़रूरत, और वो आपका supervisor हर objective sign off करता है online जैसे traditionally किया जाता है, वो आप skip कर सकते हो, because the ACCA believes that because it's approved the employer, it's already taken care. Okay, so the journey can be a bit simpler. Having said this, एक और question students को होता है कि क्या is it compulsory कि आपको approved employer के साथ ही काम करना चाहिए? बिल्कुल नहीं. You can work with any organization. Of course, ACCA has a set of approved employers that meet certain standards and practices, and if you work with them, it's wonderful. But even if your employer is not an approved employer, it doesn't matter. You still have to follow this journey. Okay, so I hope I have addressed most questions that students may have on your PR. As you start working, please start documenting your experiences. Please complete your 36 months, and you must qualify as an ACCA member. I wish you good luck on this journey. In case if there are any more questions you'd like to ask on PR, do reach out to us and we are very happy to help.